Adults of Reddit, what was traveling by plane before 9/11 like? Easy. Security was a joke. You could bring small knives on the plane, and everyone could go to the gate. I once had to turn my cell phone on to prove it was a real phone, and I got really annoyed at that level of scrutiny. I had a 30-minute drive to the airport, but could leave the house 1 hour before departure. The bag check 20 minutes before would still make the plane. Half-empty planes were pretty normal. I once had all 5 seats in a row on a 747 flight, so I laid down and slept. That started changing in the 1990s, more about $ than security. You could buy a stranger's return ticket because no one checked IDs. When I was 12 in 1971, I had a crush on a girl who lived in a town 80 miles to the south of my home. I met her on a family trip. A week later I went to my community airport on public transportation and bought an airplane ticket for $14. I flew on a DC-3 down to her city. I called her from her airport. When I got back I was hauled in front of my grandfather for a stern lecture. Once everybody was out of the room he smiled and asked me if I had a good time. He was proud of me. The biggest difference I remember is that my grandparents used to greet us at the gate as we got off the plane and come to the gate with us while we waited for our flight back home. Obviously you couldn't get on the plane without a boarding pass, but you could get through security without a boarding pass. It was so lonely at the gate after 9/11. It was awesome. You'd show up to the airport, a few friends would come too, and they'd come see you off. Or, you'd go watch friends take off. Some family friends went to Disneyland, and we got to hang out with them for a bit before their flight went off. You could show up without worrying about some stupid security line. I remember our family going to the airport to surprise our dad when he was coming home from a work flight, watching folks come off the plane at the gate. It was relaxing and luxurious. You could bring your own water on board. I miss everything about it. The stupid racist security theater we have nowadays is fucking insulting. I fly for work here and there, and my Middle Eastern co-worker, construction attorney, gets randomly checked nearly every single time. He's used to it, but I just straight up do not get why folks think this is needed. At the end of the day, in modern times, I've accidentally brought knives and pepper spray and smuggled a variety of things entirely on accident, but I sure as hell haven't been able to get a bottle of water through security. I also get sad when I'm in older airports where the security areas were just jammed in somewhere, all of the equipment looking like it's on wheels, ready to be moved at a moment's notice. Born in mid-70s. When I was a kid, Dad and I sometimes went to the airport just to watch the planes. We'd find a window with a good view of a busy runway, and he'd identify the planes for me, pointing out how to tell them apart, how fast they could go, and what it was like inside of them. Whenever I flew alone, I always got a plastic pair of pilot's wings, and I got to visit the cockpit and talk to the pilots and the navigator. Food was good too. As the attendants come through with the cold carts to serve drinks, they'd ask what we wanted for our meals. Then they'd come through again with a hot cart and pass out the meals. I loved the little trays, like tiny TV dinners. I had to fly from a tiny airport in Oregon to a slightly larger airport in Washington in the winter. It was not a planned flight, and I was pissed to be doing it, because I had my aquarium with fish in tow. My car had died, and I had to get back. I went through security with an aquarium full of fish and water to get on my flight, which was delayed, and then ended up hot-footing it through the Seattle airport still carrying this Gallinor, so aquarium with fish and water in it, that I was carrying on. Their names were Harold and Maud, and they seemed no worse for the wear. They survived another year or so after that. when I was 16 or so. So back in the 80s, my church youth group were driving to one of those big conference events, all except for the pastor's wife. She was going to fly instead. Night before we were all to take off on the road trip, the pastor got sick, so his wife wanted to drive with him to take care of him. So they just handed me her ticket, and I got on the plane. No TSAP, no bag check, no screening at all. I had a ticket, even if it had a woman's name printed on it, so I got to get on the plane. I remember people going to Lax in the 90s to meet up and have lunch. You could go all the way to the gate itself without having anyone check an ID, ticket, or bag. I only traveled by plane a handful of times before 9/11, and I was young, 6 to 8 years old, but the difference was huge from what I can remember. It was just so much more hassle-free, and people could wait for you when you got off the plane right where you were getting off. Now you got to take off your shoes and get everything checked. They go through your stuff. It takes so much longer now. It was glorious. Security was a formality really. You could roam the whole airport. If you forgot something in your car, you just walked out and got it like nothing. Even better is that if you had a friend or family member coming, you could meet them at the gate right where you got off the plane. So many drama at reunions. Social media missed all of them. The best part is that if you were going pick up your friend and his plane was late, you just drank at the bar as you would do now when waiting to leave. Aside from the security and the process of getting to the plane, the overall flight experience was way better. There was definition more legroom, which was awesome. Longer domestic flights 2+ hours even had economy meal service if you were flying during a meal time. Drinks were provided as a full can without having to ask. Flights were actually a bit faster because gas prices weren't an issue. This all started to disappear throughout the 90s and early zeros. Meal service was first to go. You could walk your friends to the gate and wait with them until it was time to board. You could go up to the gate and meet someone as they got off the plane. Watching couples embrace, squeal, kiss, and cry was one of the joyous things about people watching in airports. When you deplaned, you'd scan the faces as soon as you got off the ramp, looking for friends and family. Security didn't take 2 hours. In flight, you could see into the cockpit because the door was open. As a kid, it was cool to see all those dials and displays lit up and flashing. The only downside was all the smoking, but that was a problem everywhere.